Hey everyone, welcome back to the Tune Project. So a couple of weeks ago, I showed you all how to put new strings on your violin. Today we're talking tuning, and we're gonna be going over how to tune using both the pegs and the fine tuners. Now I know it's much easier to tune with the fine tuners, so we're gonna be talking about that first. That's a little bit more straightforward, but as far as the pegs go, that can be a little bit tricky. So we're gonna be covering both today, so stay tuned. And of course, if you do like this video and find it useful, be sure to give it a thumbs up below. And if you're not already subscribed to the Tune Project, which I know many of you are not, then I would love it if you hit that red subscribe button below, because I make videos like this one every single week, so you can catch all of those in the future as they come. So I've intentionally tuned down my strings just a little bit for the purpose of this video. So basically what the fine tuners are there for is just to do exactly what their name is, to just fine tune the strings, to just adjust just a little bit, right? We don't want to use the fine tuners if your string is way loose or completely out of tune or something like that. It's just if it's a little bit flat or a little bit sharp, that's what these are here for, is just to make those minor adjustments. Anything else we leave to the pegs. We're gonna start with the A string. All right, so in this case, my A is flat, right? So we want to tighten the fine tuner to fix that. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna go into playing position just like you normally would, and make sure that your violin is very secure under your head for this one, because we're gonna be using our left hand. All right, so what we wanna do is we wanna take our left hand and we wanna bring it around to the tailpiece so that it's touching the fine tuner, okay? And then we're gonna play our A at the same time as we're tuning, because the only way to know if you're making any sort of a difference in your string is if you can actually hear it, right? So if we're just playing and then tuning and then playing again, it's gonna be very time consuming, and it's gonna take a lot longer than it would if you were listening to it all the way through, all right? So we're gonna use our left hand to tune and use our right hand to play. All right, and there we go. So while we're doing this with the bow, we want to make sure we're very light. We don't want to be digging into the string or anything like that, because that's actually going to alter the pitch and it won't give you the true pitch. It won't give you the true note that we're looking for. So we want to make sure that we're very gentle with it, and also we don't want to be playing very short bows very quickly, because that's also not going to really help us out. That's just going to confuse our ear. So we want to use long, slow bows and be very light with our pressure, because that way you'll really be able to hear clearly what you're playing and what the note is that you're looking for. So we want to keep our bow on the string, use long bows, slow bows, and light pressure. Another thing is we want to keep our bow on the string the entire time. We don't want to be lifting it off in between as we're tuning, because again, that's going to break up the sound. And especially if you're using a tuner that you're looking at and you're watching the dial go back and forth, every time you lift your bow off the string, it's going to throw the tuner off. It's going to throw off that calibration, and you're going to notice that it's going to go from saying an A to something completely different. And you'll notice that the needle is going to go back and forth depending on the tuner that you have, and it's just not going to be effective. So we want to leave our bow on the string so that you can clearly see that it's where the dial is moving from, whether it's flat or sharp, moving to that center point. And that's going to be the fastest and most efficient way to tune. Okay, so that's how we use the fine tuners. And then as far as the pegs go, it's not terribly different. We still start off in playing position, so our violin is securely on our shoulder and under our chin, and our left hand is free, and we're gonna come around to the pegs. So say we want to tune our D string. We're still gonna be playing with our bow. We're still using our bow on the strings. In this case, I'm gonna play both my D string and my A string together so that I can really hear that they're in tune. Now, this is a technique that if you have a trained ear, this works a little bit better, because you'll be able to hear that fifth interval, and that's why it tends to be easier to play both strings at once rather than just one, because it's easier to compare the two. However, if you are using a tuner, a smartphone, or an actual tuner, then you don't have to do this. You can just use one string and it'll be able to tell you, the tuner will tell you if it's in tune rather than your ear. But in this case, I'm gonna be using both my strings. You'll hear me playing a double stop, but this still applies to just playing a single string as well, okay? So if I were to tune my D string, I would take my left hand and I'm gonna bring it over here to the peg, and we're just gonna slowly turn the peg. Alright, so now it's out of tune, it's flat, so we want to tighten the peg. So in this case, I'm gonna turn it away from me to tighten it. Until it's in tune. So again, notice how I was using long, slow bows, and like I said, you can still do this just on the single string. Making those fine adjustments there. If your pegs are being stubborn, which this can happen to any instrument, right? We've all experienced that where sometimes our pegs stick or they slip, whatever the case may be. If you find that you're having trouble, you can always bring your violin down to the lap. That's kind of the last resort, and kind of make adjustments from there, because sometimes we really do need to kind of push in and turn and things like that. If our pegs are being stubborn, we would want to do that. But what we always want to start by doing is tuning up here in playing position, okay? So make sure that you try that first, and only if you notice that your pegs are being difficult, if they're sticking and you feel that you're not strong enough to do it in this position, then you can come down with your violin and try it that way by just bracing your violin, holding its shoulder, having it set on your lap or on your leg or something if you're standing, and just make those adjustments from there. If you find that your peg is slipping, that's a different story, because that we can still control from our shoulder. So in that case, what we would do is we would just simply have our fingers around the other side, whether it's just our pinky or whether it's our ring finger and our pinky on the other side of the scroll to kind of brace the scroll. And then we're able to use that pressure from the other fingers to push in at the same time as we're turning either away from us or toward us, whichever. So try that method if your peg is slipping, if it's too loose, and see if you can't just try gently pushing in as you're turning, as you're making those adjustments, and you'll find that to be much, much easier. Now, one thing that I really want to stress the importance of with tuning is we want to be very gentle with our use of the pegs, because every string is different, every peg is going to be different, and if you're used to playing other instruments, other string instruments like the guitar or the mandolin or the ukulele, the violin is very, very different from those, and the pegs are a little bit harder to work with. So that's why we want to be very careful in approaching this in the right way, and we don't want to make any jerky or sudden movements with the pegs, because a lot of us have had the experience of strings snapping because of that, and especially when we get to the E string, since it is so thin and delicate, we want to go especially slowly there with the E peg. So if you're using this method where you're in playing position and you're turning the E peg, make sure that you do use that counter pressure of having your thumb on the other side of the scroll to brace it as you're turning, and make sure that you're still going very, very slowly so that you're not kind of confusing your ear, confusing your tuner, whatever you happen to be using. Another reason we want to go very, very slowly is because your string might be just a little bit out of tune. And if you go straight for the pegs, and if you start turning very quickly, and if you start cranking things and all of that, then it could actually make things worse. So we want to start off by just simply playing the string to hear even how out of tune it is, because it could be that it's just slightly out of tune, and you might be fine with just using the fine tuners. So if not, if you do need to use the peg, if it's that out of tune, or if you find that your fine tuners are too tight and you can't really turn them, then using the pegs is going to be the next best option. So in that case, we want to go very slowly, and my recommendation would be as soon as you hear or as soon as you feel just the tiniest movement in the peg, stop there and then play the string again, because chances are you could be closer than you think. And if you keep going, even after you feel it move, then you might end up in a position where your peg starts slipping back, it gets too loose, or things like that. So we want to take our time with it. It is a little bit of a time-consuming process, but once you tune your strings in this way, then it'll stay for longer. Now, one thing that I want to mention too is if you are a parent tuning your child's instrument and it's small and you're not really interested in learning the proper tuning technique, you just want to get their strings in tune, then what you would do is you would take their instrument, you would brace it on your lap as you're sitting, preferably. Take whichever hand that you're not using to turn. So let's say you're tuning the A string, then your right hand would be the one to turn the pegs. Your left hand is going to be bracing the shoulder of the instrument, and then vice versa if you're tuning G or D. So in this case, if we're tuning the A string, let's say, we're going to come up here with our right hand as we're bracing the instrument, and we're going to just turn it away from us or toward us, whichever direction. If the string is flat and we want to tighten it, we'd be turning the A peg away from us as we're pushing in. So again, just like in our regular tuning method, we still want to go very, very slowly, okay? We want to go slowly as we're pushing in and turning at the same time, so that we're not making any sudden movements and we're not going too farther than we need to with the string. As you're turning the peg with whichever hand, let's say in this case our right hand, we would be plucking lightly the A string with our left hand. So for example, if we're tightening it, we would want to pluck the string as we're pushing and turning the peg so that you can hear at the same time. And in this case, you would definitely want to make sure that you're looking at some sort of tuner as you're doing this, so that as you're tuning and you're plucking the string, the tuner is picking up that pitch and you know if you're accurate or not, and you can kind of go based off of that. So just wanted to make that clear, because not all of us are interested in being a violinist or being a fiddle player. Some of us just need to tune an instrument for somebody else, and that's perfectly fine. Well, thanks so much for watching, you guys. I hope that was helpful and informative in learning how to tune your strings using both your fine tuners and your pegs. Hopefully that all makes sense, and hopefully now you understand how to do that. And until next time, happy practicing.